In the annals of judicial cruelty, few punishments are as gruesome or as symbolic as being hanged, drawn and quartered, reserved in England for men convicted of high treason. This method of execution was designed not only to end the life of the accused, but to utterly obliterate their body, reputation and their legacy. Its purpose was theatrical terror, a warning etched into national memory with every dismemberment limb and every blood-soaked scaffold. The sentence of hanging, drawing and quartering originated during the reign of King Henry III in the 13th century and remained in practice until the 19th century. It was codified in law in 1352 under the Treason Act during the reign of Edward III, a period in time when loyalty to the crown was sacrosanct and betrayal was considered not merely a personal crime, but an offence against the very order of the realm. This punishment was specifically tailored for men who had committed high treason, the gravest crime possible. Women convicted of treason were typically burnt at the stake instead, reflecting prevailing gender norms that deemed the mutilation of a woman's body improper, even in death. The sentence was intended to be an ultimate deterrent, a public, humiliating and agonising death that communicated the crown's absolute authority and the horrific consequences of defying it. A man sentenced to be hanged, drawn and quartered could expect a carefully staged process, each part designed to degrade and torment. First, drawing. The condemned was first tied to a wooden hurdle or sledge and dragged by a horse through the streets to the site of execution. This often occurred over long distances, such as from the Tower of London to Tyburn. The dragging alone could result in severe injuries. Second, hanging. Upon arrival, he was hanged by the neck, but crucially not until dead. The rope was cut whilst he was still conscious, inducing strangulation, shock and pain, but sparing life for what came next. And third, disembowelment and castration. While still alive, the prisoner was disemboweled. His intestines and genitals were removed and often burnt before his eyes. This phase was unimaginably painful and designed to induce agony and terror. Fourth, beheading and quartering. Only after this disembowelment was death mercifully delivered by beheading. The corpse was then divided into 4 parts or quarters, and these were often displayed in prominent locations throughout the kingdom, city gates, bridges or marketplaces. And the display of body parts served as posthumous punishment, ensuring the traitor's infamy and discouraging future rebellion. One of the earliest and most famous victims was William Wallace, the Scottish patriot who led resistance against Edward I. Captured in 1305, Wallace was dragged naked through the streets of London, hanged until near dead and then mutilated. Chronicler Walter of Guisborough wrote, "He was stripped naked and dragged through the city at the heels of a horse, hanged on high gallows, and whilst alive, emasculated and disemboweled, his entrails burnt before him. Finally, his body was cut into 4 parts, and his head fixed on London Bridge. His quarters were sent to Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling and Perth, cities where his rebellion had taken root." Another victim was Guy Fawkes, part of the failed 1605 gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament and assassinate King James I. On January 31st, 1606, he was brought to the gallows in Old Palace Yard. Fawkes, weakened by torture, managed to jump from the gallows and broke his neck, escaping the worst of the execution. Nonetheless, his body was still quartered. Thomas Cromwell, the once powerful chief minister of Henry VIII, met a variant of this fate in 1540. Though spared the full horror by being beheaded, his enemies used his execution to symbolically erase his legacy, as was done with those hanged and quartered. Later victims, such as David Tirry, executed in 1782, demonstrated that even into the 18th century, the punishment retained its gruesome ritual. Tirry, a British soldier convicted of spying for France, was hanged, then beheaded and quartered, before a massive crowd in Portsmouth. A witness wrote, "The executioner, with his arms steeped in blood, held up the severed head, crying, 'Behold the heart of a traitor,' as the crowd gasped and moaned." Executions were public spectacles. Thousands gathered to watch, drawn by fear, morbid curiosity, or nationalist zeal. Reactions varied. Some jeered, others wept or fainted. In the 17th century, Samuel Pepys recorded a chilling observation in his diary after witnessing a traitor's death on October 13th, 1660. He was hanged and quartered, which was very strange to see how he was cut down alive, and his bowels burnt before he was quite dead. Even hardened Londoners found the process revolting. Some victims were hacked apart with brutal speed, others suffered prolonged agony. Executions often sparked debate, with critics questioning whether such public horror was moral or effective. By the 18th century, Enlightenment ideas of justice and human rights began to challenge the legitimacy of such punishments. Many began to view the sentence as barbaric and outdated. In practice, the brutality of drawing and quartering was increasingly mitigated. Executioners hanged victims until dead before disembowelment. The last full legal sentence of hanging, drawing and quartering in England was passed in 1820 against the Cato Street conspirators, although the disembowelment and quartering were commuted to beheading after hanging. The official abolition of the punishment came in 1870, with the Forfeiture Act finally ending a practice that had terrorised men for over 5 centuries. To be hanged, drawn and quartered was not just to be executed, it was to be unmade. The punishment stripped its victim of dignity, of flesh and even of memory. It was medieval justice at its most theatrical, and it was most horrifying. More than just a punishment, it was a public ritual of obliteration, a state-sanctioned spectacle meant to strike fear into every subject's heart. Its brutality lay not only in its physical agony, but in its psychological message. Your body is not your own if you betray the king. Your death will be slow, your shame eternal. The punishment stands today as a haunting reminder of how power once expressed itself not merely through the law, but through the body, the blood and the bones of the condemned.